Good morning, and thank you for joining me on another episode of Voluntary Virtues. This is the Conversation with Kelly Diamond. You can catch me every Thursday at 6:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, 9:30 Eastern Time, as well as my written word every Monday on globalwealthprotection.com. Little special additional blog just went out this morning regarding the inversion rates and the tax structures of Ireland. So if you're interested in that, you're more than welcome to check it out. Again, globalwealthprotection.com. Okay, so I guess to get on the bandwagon. I wanted to talk a bit about the Ebola. Yes, the Ebola. I think I might as well throw my 2 depreciating American cents into the ring. I'm not any medical expert. All right, so I'm not here to talk about the finer points of Ebola and its medical implications, or what it will or won't do in terms of the world, in terms of the United States, Africa, etc. But I think it's not to say that it's another boogeyman, okay? Because I think terrorists is more of a boogeyman than Ebola. Ebola is an actual disease; it really exists. My foil hat is not refined enough to say that the United States government created it. Okay, I'm willing to accept that it is a naturally occurring mutated virus, like any other virus, and that it does threaten the lives of people. Okay, it's deadly. Okay, so I'm not in denial of that, and I'm not in denial about the fact that it obviously can be passed from person to person, not as easily as the flu, but certainly in conditions where perhaps sanitation and hygiene are not paramount values, so, or practiced regularly. So in that regard, it is a real threat, especially to areas of the third world. I don't deny the 8,000 plus death toll in West Africa. But with all of that threatening madness aside, I think it's also important for individuals to keep their liberty-mindedness in check when it comes to things of this nature. There are a lot of deadly things out there. Okay, and at one point I got an email once from my ex-husband encouraging me to vaccinate our kids against the flu. And the flu and Ebola are not the same, so don't think I'm trying to equate them, okay? I'm trying to make a point. And he sends me this article about how 6 people in Texas died, which, like, statistically is really not something to lose any sleep over. Certainly not one that would make me want to rush to the nearest CVS and get my kids vaccinated. The article never indicated the age, the health conditions, or anything about the victims of the flu. The people who were afflicted with the flu and died in Texas. It was just 6 people died in Texas. Okay, the flu can kill people. It can. If you're over 65 or under 2 years old, yeah, there's definitely a chance that your immune system is not strong enough to fend it off. If you already have a weak immune system at any age, the flu can absolutely take you. I mean, if you have HIV, if you have AIDS, full-blown AIDS, you can die from the flu. You can, that's possible. Okay, so yeah, it's deadly to many people. But to healthy, 4 and 7-year-olds, not as much. Not as much. And I don't know if I was necessarily I wasn't ready to go and take my kids out to get vaccinated over. Okay. But articles like that, of course, come out every fall. The flu vaccine is not really, this is not an anti-vax rant. I'm just saying that it wasn't necessarily, it's botched the year before. In 2012, it was, we treated the wrong strain. Okay, there weren't that many that were actually protected from the flu, and it's one of those things where, well, if you don't get it, then it must have worked, which is kind of like saying, well, if you didn't lose your job, then I must have stimulated the economy enough to save it, right? I don't know. That's kind of where I'm at on that. So that's the vaccine aspect of it. There's no current vaccine for Ebola, but there isn't enough for me to panic. And even if I were to panic, there is never going to be anything. Okay. And I think this is something that perhaps it would help for me anyway, is that taking somebody's liberties is never on the table unless it's in self-defense, in which case, it's to defend your own, and it is a preservation of life and liberty. And so, yeah, you defend yourself then. But there's never going to be a point where I say, deprive this person of their liberty, preemptively, especially. Right? And so that's not on the table, just like spanking is not on the table for me. All right. So when you take certain things off the table and say, I don't care what we do, but I ain't doing that. That really, I think, defines the conversation. It defines the solution for a person. And I think it opens the door for other more creative possibilities and solutions to a problem. Now, just as an aside, when people panicked over the BP spill in the Gulf, countless innovators came to the table with ideas, because it wasn't that there were no solutions. It wasn't that there was this one solution on the table. It was that there were no solutions at all. Okay. So there wasn't even a default to run to. Everybody had to start brainstorming as to how they were going to remedy this problem in the Gulf when the BP spill happened. And so people were coming out of nowhere. I mean, they were showing how it would work on TV. Here's an example of what my solution does. My solution pulls all the oil together, and then you can literally just wipe off the surface of the water and take it away. There's all this amazing stuff coming out, and I'm thinking, well, hell, can it be worse? Whatever it is you're about to do to the water, can it be worse than what's happening now? Right? Probably not. So I'm thinking, hell, let them out there. But of course, there's all this bureaucratic red tape that prevented a lot of these people from getting out there in the first couple of days. That went over a month of spilling oil into the Gulf because we couldn't get our bureaucratic shit together. As a government, they couldn't get their shit together enough to let people out there and try something. Okay. So wildlife, plant life, a lot of different life took a beating because we couldn't get our shit together, right? As people, we couldn't get our shit together. As a government, their shit's all over the place. They're unhinged. But there was no solutions that were allowed to be used, which is a problem, right? That's a problem. I mean, I don't even think that's a political issue. I think it's just universally understood. It's a problem when you can't get a solution out there to fix something that's happening like this, right? It's destructive. So then, now we're back to Ebola. What are we going to do? Well, I think we keep the solutions on the table that will actually address the issue and not the fear, is where I'm at. Am I freaked out at the prospect of, it's an excruciating death. Okay. Ebola is something that if it happens to you, you'll start confessing shit you've never done before. I've seen what it can do to people. I've seen some nasty ass pictures. I've read about it to the extent that I can. I haven't studied it, so like I said, I'm not a medical expert, but I'm willing to accept the fact that it's a miserable fucking disease. Okay, no debate there. I'm not. The facts are the facts, and I'm willing to accept them. It's what to do with them, right? So it's not to say that I don't see the facts the same way as everybody else. I accept what is fact, right? My jury's out on the things that aren't confirmed fact yet, but it's enough to shake me up, and it's certainly enough to rattle me and say, yeah, okay, that's some scary shit. What to do about it? Okay, well, I'm taking people's liberties off the table. That's not up for debate. That's not up for negotiation. That's not part of the solution. Part of the solution is not criminalizing people who are afflicted. Being sick is not a crime. The end. I don't care what kind of sickness you have. Being sick is not a crime. I'm not going back to the days of saying that a woman on her period goes and sits in a hut for a week and gets removed from the rest of society because she's cursed or whatever. That type of mentality is gone. And no, it's not. I don't care about your greater good, and I don't care about public safety. No, I will not. It is not on the table that we criminalize people who are sick. The end. The end. Okay. And so I'm not going to cage you and sequester you like a criminal. I'm not going to put you in a room full of miserable ass people who also might be sick and have Ebola. I'm not unconfirmed, you know. I'm not putting you in quarantine. I'm not doing any of that. I'm not calling for that. I'm not backing that. I don't endorse that. Taking somebody's liberties, I don't give a shit how sick you are, and I don't care what kind of disease you have. You don't take their liberties. I mean, a person who has decided to weaponize their sickness, example, somebody who knows they have AIDS, going around and sleeping with people and spreading the disease without disclosing that they have this disease. That is malicious. That is premeditated. That's a crime. Okay, we can treat it as a crime. Simply having Ebola or simply having AIDS is not a crime. Now, I remember the AIDS scare. I remember all the stuff that was coming out when I was in school about AIDS. Okay. And the social attitude towards AIDS transitioned from holy fuck, it's a whole new lep colony, right? Out of Africa. Got to stay away from them. Can't shake hands. I can't even go to the department store because a person with HIV might have tried on the same shirt, and then I'll get HIV. This was the scare. This was the scare. Then rational people in the field said, no, this is not how it's transmitted. You can shake their hand, and unless you've got an open wound and they've got an open wound, you're not transmitting it. It's transmitted through bodily fluids, etc. And they all explain it. Then, of course, the next layer of fear mongering. I can't let go of this. I'm not giving up the ghost just yet. We don't know how it's going to mutate. Maybe right now it's not transmitted that way, but it could mutate, and then it could transmit. It could be transmitted and passed on in this way or that way, and through a sneeze, and through sharing a can of soda. And I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm dating myself here, but that was almost the exact conversation and the discourse that I was listening to in grade school about AIDS. Now people got AIDS, right? I'm sorry, Magic Johnson has had AIDS for decades. Or he's actually had HIV. He doesn't have AIDS. But he's had HIV for decades. There's people walking around with HIV all over the place we don't know. Right? And there are people with AIDS who are dying, sadly. Okay. And we're cool. Society has continued. We're still concerned about the Kardashians and who's dancing with the stars today. I mean, we picked up and moved on. We live with AIDS among us. We live with cancer among us. We still move on. understand something about the human race. We're very roach-like. We've survived so many variations of death. It's ridiculous. We've survived smallpox, scarlet fever, the plague, rubella, polio. The human race has persevered with far less medical technology than we have now. We've survived this as a race. Okay. Not only have we survived that, but the human race is on a mission to destroy itself with nuclear bombs and the horrible stewardship of the planet, the shit we're willing to eat. I mean, the leading cause of human death in the world is heart disease. Okay, preventable. A preventable disease takes hundreds of thousands of lives. The daredevil bullshit we do just for YouTube fame. I mean, we are self-destructive as a race, as a human race. We are self-destructive. There are a few out there who want to preserve their life, but certainly they don't stand a chance amidst their brethren who are on a die-hard mission full of resources, bottomless resources, to go and destroy the human race. Okay. Now, our greatest threat is ourselves as human beings, not Ebola. Ebola, in terms of greatest threat to human race, it doesn't even show up on the grid yet. Okay? In the pie chart, the big red pie chart, it's the little thin hair of a line. That's the slice of that pie chart in terms of posing a threat to the human race. It's that thin line. Okay? Before that, it's human beings that are the greatest threat to human beings. Right? And in that list of human beings, Middle Eastern ISIS terrorists are still a tiny slice. Okay? Especially to people in the United States. Okay? So then, in that list of human beings, as we're moving towards greater threats, I would say car accidents, diet. Okay? These are all things that are going to kill you first. Cops. These human voluntary things that we do to ourselves are going to kill us first. Okay? I'm more afraid still, and this is where a broken clock can in fact be right twice a day. And this is one of them. Melissa Perry from MSNBC, I'm more afraid of cops than I am of Ebola. Yes. Correct. Agreed. Rational, statistically supported. Okay. Now, in terms of Ebola posing a threat to the United States, especially, one, panicking about it will only exacerbate the problem. Okay? Which is why I refuse to panic about it, because it's an irrational thing that will ultimately lead to more death and destruction. Panic kills. Panic kills every time. Panic unto itself is one of the most deadly reactions a human being can have. Okay. If you panic behind the wheel, you will crash your car. Or at least you certainly escalate the chances of you crashing your car and getting into an accident and either hurting or killing somebody. Panic will do that. I've said this before. I could drop some dry ice in the middle of a mall during holiday shopping and kill more people with the word bomb than I can with an actual bomb. Panic will kill, okay? Which is why we don't panic. Panic is deadly. Panic is more deadly than Ebola. At the end of the day, it will take more lives. So, we don't panic. Not this week. This member of we does not panic. For that reason alone. Because that only takes a life-threatening situation and fucks up your odds of surviving it. Okay? So we're taking that off the table. The panic is we're taking off the table for sure. People going after people's liberties and criminalizing sick people, also off the table. Because I am a staunch believer that a sick person especially, terminally ill person especially, needs their rights more than ever. We all do. They're all important. Okay? But a terminally ill person, their time is limited on how long they will be able to exercise their rights. And so each exercise is precious. Each decision they make is far more important to them. Do I want to be treated in my house? Or do I want to be treated amongst other sick people? Do I want to die in my house? Or do I want to die with other sick people? You know, these are more crucial questions that are far more pressing and far more important to them. Okay. It might not be as important to you where a person or another person died, but it's absolutely the most critical thing for a person who is terminally ill. So I'm not taking away their dignity, because in taking away their liberty, you will take away their dignity, and that's not on the table either. Okay, we don't need to be undignified. We can be civilized and dignified, and we can make this decision while we're still rational, while the threat is still over there. You know, think, right? This is where this is what defines us as people. This is what defines our character. It's not the fair weather libertarian. It's not the fair weather, anti-government person. It's when the shit hits the fan and Sharknado is coming at you. What are you going to do? Are you all of a sudden going to throw somebody else's liberties under the bus? No. No. Then all this talk is for naught, right? All this voluntarism, all the anarchy talk, all the, peaceful living, all of that, all this non-aggression principle stuff is bullshit. If when the rubber hits the road and the shit hits the fan, you're willing to throw it all out the door and call upon the government to sequester people and quarantine people. I mean, I'm reading articles, and I don't know how true it is yet, but I've read already some articles about how, Obama wants to send in a militarized group of people to swoop in on people who have been confirmed as having Ebola. I mean, militarizing, and coming after these people. And it's sad enough that we criminalize people who are suffering addiction in our drug wars. Okay, we criminalize these people who are hurting, but we're now going to criminalize people who are sick physically, not just mentally, but physically. That's horrible. Okay, which is why I want it off the table. Which is why I'm staunchly advocating that until we understand this more, we don't make these kinds of rash decisions, and that whatever decisions we make, that perhaps the decisions that need to be made the most by each person is how they're going to behave. What are they going to do as individuals to make it safer? Are you going to be more diligent about washing your hands? Are you going to be more diligent about cleaning your space and and perhaps maybe you'll go and invest in a $3 bottle of bleach, which is already confirmed able to kill the Ebola virus. Okay. So perhaps soap and water and bleach are on the table for more people now. It is the cheapest way, and and it's good practice anyway. That it is what separates the first from the third world. It's not just the money, it's the resources. We have the resources to be a more safer and hygienic and sanitary society, and typically that is what keeps disease at bay, these viruses at bay. We don't have these outbreaks mainly because we're a first world country that doesn't have a lack of resources and the inability to leech off a counter. We can just run down to the local convenience store and drugstore and get this stuff. So this is, I mean, take advantage of the fact that there are resources available to you. And if it is in fact a priority to not take more lives than necessary, that we're trying to mitigate and we're trying to prevent deaths associated with this, then don't incite panic. Well-intended as you are, I'm just trying to educate people. Then spare us the hyperbole. Spare us the hyperbole, and and don't start and let's not take extreme measures. That's not necessary. I mean, if you want to tell me a fact about Ebola, then tell me a fact about Ebola. Telling people, well, you can't, instituting travel bans, that ultimately, one of the unintended consequences of that is that you're going to prevent humanitarian aid from getting to the people who need it. So now what? Those people are going to die because you think that's somehow saving your life? It's not. You've just allowed another set of people to die. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's got to be thought through a little better. There are unintended consequences. And when the government comes in especially, there's no, it never handles anything efficiently, effectively. There is no, extracting just the problem areas and doing it accurately. I had somebody tell me once that they thought we should just go in and capture ISIS. Really? You're going to go find all the ISIS members? You're going to try them? You're going to give them a trial, and you're going to try them and make sure that they're all guilty first before killing them? You're not just going to go in with a bunch of fucking guns and tanks and kill people who look like a threat, right? When has the U.S. government ever done that? The U.S. government has never, ever done anything like that, unless it wanted to assassinate somebody, right? I mean, you want to assassinate the elected prime minister of Congo, I guess you'll do it. But unless it wants to exact that kind of precision of death, it doesn't do it. We kill people massively, on a massive scale, innocent or otherwise. We don't wait to find out if they're innocent or guilty. And that's how the U.S. government operates. You're guilty until proven innocent. You're guilty until proven innocent. That's how our cops operate. And that is how our federal government operates. And that's how it will operate. And there are going to be countless people. If you start advocating that the government get involved in this, which they already are anyway, but calling for certain measures and thinking that it's going to be tempered and somehow restrained and disciplined, I mean, there's no reason for you to believe that the United States government would behave in such a way, that it would behave in a rational or responsible way. There's no track record. There's no reason to believe that this is how this animal is going to respond. Okay? So historically, the United States government is the last thing that's going to preserve life. The U.S. government doesn't preserve life. The U.S. government is an institution of death. The U.S. government is responsible for the most amount of pollution in the world, specifically the Department of Defense. Okay, think on that. When I was telling you about how human beings are on a mission to destroy themselves, the U.S. government is the prime example. Its mere inception and its continued existence proves my point that we are on a self-destructive mission as a human race to die, and that Ebola, globally, Ebola is not your worst enemy. Maybe in certain regions of Africa, it might be a greater threat, But globally, the greatest threat to the human race is the US government. The greatest threat domestically to the US citizen is the US government and its little subsidiaries. Okay? So let's not lead with panic. Let's not follow panic into the darkness. Let's keep our heads about us. Let's learn about the disease. And let's learn about what we can do as individuals to mitigate the problem and offset the problem. Help people. It's a novel concept, and it is probably the most anti-government stand and 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 activism you can indulge is to help people. An act of kindness is a rebellion against the devil, right? So try that. Let's try and come up with real solutions that preserve life by taking death off the table and panic off the table and an attack and assault on individual liberties off the table. There it is, my 2 depreciating American cents on Ebolas, on the Ebolas. I'll catch you next week. Take it easy. Bye.